This next fake news article from the Daily Fake Mail, COVID-19 and Spanish flu similarities, how mask pushback started a second wave. An expert on the Spanish flu in Australia says widespread rejection of face coverings during the 1919 epidemic was what caused a second wave. Really? So not wearing masks caused a second wave. Wait. Problem with it, totally fake. Reason why is because the virus mutated in China. Potential origins. So they think this is the backstory. I'm paraphrasing. Always look up the primary source first. What happened was there was multiple waves of this flu epidemic, and it did not get extremely deadly until it mutated in two different places. It's suspected of having mutated in the United States once, and then it's also suspected of mutating again in China. And then it went over to Europe and it killed all the people in Spain, and that's why they called it the Spanish flu. But it did not come from Spain. So they're saying that because some ridiculously stupid scientist, some dude who's completely brainwashed, because they believe that they believe they're so smart because they took a class. They know everything about looking at the data. And if you don't believe it, you're denying science. You're denying facts. You're going to kill people if you deny the science. And what it ends up happening is that they got the data wrong because they didn't have all the facts. It's just like if you're familiar with my big scientific theory, is the theory of thermal relativity. It's a incremental improvement upon Albert Einstein's theory of general relativity. Using the formula here, let me type it up because I don't have my document camera. I do need to get the document camera in. I will bring a document camera over here. The formula is, sorry, I can't see. God, I hate this mouse. The formula is 0 is less than E divided by alpha, because I don't know what else to call it. It's less than or equal to MC squared. Hold on. Over alpha less than or equal to 1. If you want to know what this formula means, I covered it on Real Simple News with Science last week. Look for the article with all of the naked people on the front. What was it? They found a star traveling at 8% of the speed of light. And so I showed you here that we can view a space between two stars. You have two stars and there's a point between them. It's called the thermal equilibrium. This is the point where the speed of light is at its maximum speed. And then inside of the black holes, the E equals MC squared equals 0. Hence the squeeze theorem here. 0 is less than E over alpha is less than MC squared over alpha. It's less than 1. 1 is pure space. And then if you take the mass of a hydrogen atom, what's the mass of a hydrogen atom? 1.008. You could do 1.008, and you'll see that that's almost 1. So there's an inverse relation to mass. Energy has an inverse relation to mass, and you can see there's a really cool theory of how the mass spreads. It's the geometry of how it goes into a sphere where there's more room to spread out around the outside. And this causes actually phonons in the atoms to have interactions with the quantum field because it looks like a vacuum, but there's actually little particles out there. And those little particles actually push against the phonons in the atoms. And when you go really fast, it actually causes time to slow down because of the phonon. This is my theory. I actually invented this theory. And it's based off of, it's fascinating. This is such a cool theory. It's heat can travel in a, heat exchange can travel through a vacuum. This is from nature.com. Talks about phonon heat transfer across vacuum through quantum fluctuations. And so I'm reasonably sure the reason why, I'm 99.999% sure the reason why time slows is because there's actually small itty bitty little particles out there in the quote unquote vacuum of space that are having interactions with molecules. This is the reason why spaceships cool down out in outer space. If it was actually a vacuum, spaceships would never cool down in outer space. It's a fact, but they do. And the reason why is because of this phonon heat transfer. It affects the spin. What's happening is the molecules are spinning. Got a bunch of little molecules, and then there's the phonon. There's a spooky force at a distance, which is why I'm bringing this up. The spooky force at a distance, which is what does this have to do with what I was talking about? Spooky force at a distance. So I believe, I'm agnostic with this. I don't believe that this is true. It's just a theory on how gravity works. Shows you that it's basically, they're always working their way down a thermal gradient from the highest possible energy down to the lowest possible energy, which is the inside of a black hole, at which point in time it evaporates into Hawking radiation through basically light folding in on itself. So it's they separate like elements in a test tube by weight. And so at the bottom of the test tube is the black hole. At the top is the thermal equilibrium between the two stars. So I don't have the reason why I'm bringing this up is I don't have all the data behind this. I cannot claim that this is true. I cannot claim that this is has any sort of relevance in science because I am missing data. We're talking about spooky force at a distance here. We're talking about Schrodinger's cat. We're talking about the cat that is both alive and dead in the box at the same time. It's a statistical probability the cat is alive, and it's 60% alive and 40% dead. And but what you can see from this is obviously spooky force at a distance is kind of weird. So there obviously has to be some sort of other mechanism as to why the spins of the phonons are actually changing, and then that's causing the heat transfer through the vacuum. But because I don't have all of this information, I'm not going to pretend like I know what I'm talking about. Because in the reality of the world, I absolutely don't know what. I basically have an ability to visualize things because I used to throw raves and I used to go to psytrance parties and make 3D decorations for psytrance parties and stuff. I'm one of those psytrance nerds. You would like deck out the rave party with a whole bunch of cool deco. And from that, it's given me an ability to visualize, to be able to see structures. I visualized, basically, I took an imaginary trip on a bicycle in my head up to the thermal equilibrium. It was this weird just visualization. I just rode up there on a fucking bike in my head and I saw it. Looked down at the black hole and I was able to visualize inside of the black hole and the thermal gradient and how the molecules are going from the highest potential, which is pure space, which is 1. Hence the formula 0 is less than E, over alpha is less than or equal to MC squared over alpha is less than or equal to 1. And that is because energy is inversely proportionate to mass, because energy cannot exist without space to spread out on. This is why the speed of light is meters per second, is because it is time is actually a distance. That's what it's like, the prisms that spread out in light. So when you see a prism spreading light, that's because the light is taking the shortest possible path through time. That's because it's moving back and forth. It's oscillating. It's not just like a straight line. It's like moving back and forth. As it moves a higher or a smaller frequency. Higher frequency means that it got a smaller waveform. lower frequency. Hold on. Higher frequency. Wait, no. Higher frequency means it's got more energy. And then lower frequency means that it's moving slower. So the line is physically longer. So if it's waving like this, the line is longer as opposed to the fast moving energy. The line is shorter. So that causes the higher energy lights to actually move. And this all goes into the LIGO. The gravitational wave that hit us in the LIGO hit us about a second and a half early before the light hit us. And that is an indication that the gravity traveled faster than the light. And the reason why I'm claiming is for this is because there's subatomic particles out in the vacuum of space that push on each other, and they cause phonon heat transfer in a vacuum. And that there's a thermal equilibrium between the two stars where the amount of space is physically maximized. And you can do a calculation on every star, and you can actually do a superposition of the different things, and you can actually calculate the C parameter. But I don't have evidence. If you actually know how to get some evidence on that, you should comment on issue 88. realsimplenews.net/issue 88. We want to know what alpha is, because alpha is not C. That is the most neat thing about this formula. That is the coolest thing about this formula is, what the fuck is alpha, dude? Obviously this exists. Obviously there is a space between two planets where the physical space, or between two suns, where the physical space is the most. This is a fact. There's no question between that, because you have two suns. They're the farthest apart at the equilibrium between the two. They're the farthest apart. Physically, there's the most space there. And so that's one. But you can't just take out C, or you can't take out M. There's a different scalar. And this actually it's getting canceled out of the equation. It's actually getting canceled out of the equation. It's like not a complex conjugate, kind of like a complex conjugate. Yeah, I think it's like a complex conjugate, but I don't know. This is just theorization that I have in my head. I'm digressing, but obviously you would not want to take anything that I say about this seriously. Well, no, you would actually want to take it seriously, because that is a really cool theory. It goes down the periodic table from pure space down into equals mc squared equals 0, when mass is infinite, speed of light is 0. But this is the problem with what people are taking these people, everything that they say for like it's like a Bible. And just because they say, oh, he's an expert on the Spanish flu, right? I invented the theory of thermal relativity. Trust me, I am not an expert on thermal relativity, dude. I came up with the idea. I looked at it. I kind of knew some shit. I am not the expert. You're going to have to go talk to somebody who else is the expert on that. Don't believe any of these scientists. They all have kooky theories like this. Every single last one. We need them to have kooky theories. We need to test all of these different theories, because it might sound really kooky right now, but it might actually end up being that was the solution. It sounded crazy at first, but it was legit. Oh, what else do we want to do here? I'm going to skip through the rest. I'm cutting out part of the show because I've gone too long.